The first horse racing video of 2025 is here for the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. We've still got plenty of NFL action to talk about before the Super Bowl. We will have a playoff video as well this week, but we're focusing on the Lecomte Stakes down in New Orleans at the fairgrounds. And you couldn't have picked a harder race, Tom.
Yeah, it's a tricky affair, big field, but look, it's a Kentucky Derby trial, so why not? This is the first proper Kentucky Derby trial going into 2025. We've got loads coming up over the next few weeks, so we'll be covering plenty of them. There are 20 Kentucky Derby qualifying points up for grabs for the winner of this contest, and we've seen in recent years that you only generally need between 20 and 25 to earn a berth in the Derby itself. So this is an important race, and yeah, it's very tricky from a punting point of view and us trying to find a winner, but hopefully we can cover plenty of bases and at least mention the winner if we don't side with them at the end.
Yeah, exactly that. We want to try and find the winner, but as you will see in a few moments' time, it is a relatively difficult thing. We will go through as many as we possibly can, and we will also tell you about our wonderful sponsors in the form of SBK, who, if you haven't got the app already, go download the new app. They're adding so much stuff to it, apparently, and they will give you as much as possible, including free bets. You place £10, you get £40 in free bets. What are you waiting for? T's and C's apply. 18 plus, and please gamble responsibly. You can also bet in the Lecomte as well. There are markets out there, Tom. Don't know if you've seen those, because you're in a country where gambling is the forbidden forest.
I have not seen them. Can you run us through the prices?
No, guess all of them. No, I will. There's 12. Bill is 11-4. Disco Time is 3-1. Admiral Dennis at 8, alongside Magnitude. 9-1 Tough Catch. Golden Afternoon 10s. Innovator 14s. Maximum Promise is 16s. 20s and bigger the rest. Honestly, nailed it.
It feels like they've kind of copied the morning line,
Yeah,
while also just adjusting Disco Time's price a little bit, which is probably about right. I mean, on the morning line, he's 9-2, and you said 3-1, I think. So
yeah.
I can certainly see that. He shouldn't be 9-2 on the morning line anyway.
No, they're not far wrong. I mean, normally when we're talking about this, that the morning line prices, a lot of them are absolutely terrible. I was talking about a horse on air on Sky the other night, and it was like 4-6, and I was like, oh, this horse could easily be 2-5, and I was like, let me check the morning line price, 5-2. I was like, in what world are you getting off on this? But to be fair, for the Lecomte, Tom, and largely the whole card, morning lines aren't too bad.
Yeah, it looks quite accurate. Fairgrounds is generally pretty good when it comes to morning line anyway, and this should just be a really nice contest. It is wide open, as we've talked about. No short price favourite, which is kind of the way of the world when it comes to Turf and Touchdowns podcast anyway. We don't tend to choose the easy races. But there are lots of promising young horses in here, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see a Kentucky Derby contender.
You say we don't tend to choose the easy races. I just do as you say. You pick the race. It's you. You don't pick the easy races.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, look, who wants to listen to a 15-minute chat between you and I about a race where there's a 1-2 favourite and everyone knows that horse is likely to win? No one. Why not pick the trickiest? And then when it comes to Saturday evening, we can just cry to each other in the WhatsApp chat when we just pick another second and third.
Yeah, literally, it's like, second and third again. Well, next week we'll get him. No, second and third again. We're back at it. Leave a comment down below. 1-2, absolute good thing, or dance around and get second and third again. Let's go through the race, because the first thing to know, obviously we are dealing with largely inexperienced horses in here, Tom, but there is a ton of pace on.
Yeah, there looks to be a lot of speed, especially inside as well. Innovator and Maximum Promise drawn in 1 and 2. They're likely to both be ridden aggressively. And, you know, when you get big fields like this, especially with young horses, if you are drawn inside and you do have tactical speed, you have to kind of go as a rider. You can't just sit. Otherwise, all the horses will congregate across to the rail. You'll be shuffled back in the pack. And from there, you just virtually have no chance of winning. So with Innovator and Maximum Promise, two horses that we've seen in recent starts, they've gone to the front and dictated matters. I see no reason why they will change tactics on either of those horses. So they should go forward. I think Disco Time for Brad Cox is likely to push forward from his wide gate in 11 as well. And maybe a couple in the middle of the pack will also try and be a little bit aggressive. I think they're going to go hard. I don't necessarily know what fractions we're expecting. Maybe 45 seconds through the half, 46 seconds. But it's going to be quick enough, and it's really going to allow every horse in the race to have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely that. They're going to go hell for leather from the get-go. Even Built might be able to get involved in the early skirmishings. Probably not. But we'll start with Built. Jareth Lovebury taking the ride. Wouldn't normally be a rider that on the Kentucky Derby trail you'd be watching out for. But to be fair to Jareth Lovebury, he has had a fantastic meeting down in New Orleans.
He's had a phenomenal meet, and as I'm talking, I'm just going to quickly bring up his stats. At Fairgrounds so far, he's striking at around 28%. I mean, not many jockeys can say that. He hasn't had too many rides at Fairgrounds, but when he goes there, he's got a great strike rate. He also rides at Oaklawn and can ride plenty for basically Larry Ravelli, wherever Ravelli sends his horses.
Did you
Um,
see? Did you see the other day with Gareth Lovebury? He won a stakes race, and someone sent him abuse on social media because he beat their horse.
no way, really.
He literally tweeted, "It was like this is the first time I've ever been abused for winning a race." like literally, the it was something like, "Ah, screw you, expletive, expletive. You just cost me $20." I was like what?
Yeah,
That's
there's a point
that.
where
Whoever was second, that punter has got a toxic relationship with that jockey because he is afraid to approach that jockey.
yeah, absolutely. And also, there's a point on social media where punters really have to just stop going on there and messaging jockeys. I mean, in certain situations, especially like this one, where it sounds like Jareth was just on the obvious winner and you bet the second. Like, what are you gaining from messaging? It just makes no sense whatsoever. But at least Jareth's got some personality, which is what we like to see. Most of these jockeys just generally hide away from socials, and I can understand why, given the majority of messages. But he's a very good rider, and if he is increasing his social media presence, that's great. He is on board Built here. I have to admit, when we studied this race, and I'll talk about Built in a second. When I studied this race, it was prior to flying to the Middle East, where I am now, and there were no morning line prices. I didn't expect him to be favourite. I thought Disco Time would be favourite. That being said, I thought he'd be second in because of his last two successes. They've been extremely impressive. This is a horse who hit the line powerfully over a mile and 16th, a mile and a half a furlong last time out. The distance is going to be perfect for him, and that is not a proven for many other horses in this race. He's still improving right now. He represents connections that aren't necessarily used to having horses in these Derby preps. Wayne Catalano doesn't have too many good 3-year-olds, but he's a very, very promising young horse, and hopefully he can go close. The issue with Built is his draw. He's out in 13. He's going to have to break well and get into a good spot.
Yeah, it is. I can't envisage him getting to the lead in this
No.
spot, and Disco Time possibly could be similar. But I think moving on to Disco Time, he's not a horse that necessarily wants to be on the front end. I think just a strong pace is going to help him. You talk about Built hitting the line strongly. Last time around, Disco Time, his most impressive furlong was the final one. He travelled well throughout the race, yes, but that was over the mile. He steps up to a mile and 16th. If he gets in front, fine. If they go hard and he has to sit third or fourth, but he gets a good pace to aim at, I'm absolutely okay with that as well.
Yeah, he's an unbeaten job on homebred. I do think he's got lots of natural speed, so I wouldn't be surprised if he managed to sit maybe second or third in this race. Whereas I think Built will probably be in around fifth or sixth. Especially with Brad Cox horses in these 3-year-old races, they tend to be ridden really aggressively to get into that ideal stalking role. They don't want to be messing around with traffic. So I think Florence Giroux is going to be aggressive, which is probably a good thing for fans of Disco Time. That win on debut over the 7 furlongs at Churchill was very impressive. And then, as you say, last time up over the mile, hit the line well and probably didn't get asked for maximum effort either. It's an interesting quandary with him because he's unbeaten. I thought he'd be favourite because of the amount of potential, but the fact he isn't favourite could make him a bet in here. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if you're watching this maybe an hour, 2 hours before the race, if he is now favourite in the UK, and if you're watching this in the US, I think he'll probably open up favourite over there as well. He'll take a lot of money just due to connections and his unbeaten record.
Yeah, exactly. Especially being down here in Louisiana as well. When we sort of initiate the protocol of thinking about these sorts of races, you then give 3 horses to focus upon. The 2 we've mentioned. The third one was Calling Card, who is currently in the UK 20-1 chance. Frankie Dettori is on board. I think Calling Card is a big player. However, he needs them to go harder even more than the Disco Time needs them to go hard because Calling Card's going to be doing a lot of running from the back of the field.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting for 2 reasons. One, because Frankie Dettori rides, and 2, because he could be the beneficiary of a fast early speed. As you say, when we do the running order for the races that we cover on Turf and Touchdowns, I do try to find the 3 contenders, and I try to guess who the 3 market leaders are going to be. I mean, we covered the first and second favourites, fortunately, but I'm very surprised about the price of Calling Card. 20-1's way too big. Now, he's not going to be my selection, but if you are looking for a bit of value in the UK and you're watching this early and that price is still available, I wouldn't put you off. I think 20-1's a fair price for him. The issue with Calling Card is that he was considered to be a turf horse at the start of his career. He ran in 2 turf events to kickstart his life on the track and then subsequently switched to dirt. The reason why he switched to dirt was there was an off the turf event. He was entered to run on the turf, got moved to the dirt, and he absolutely bolted up That came in New York. He
Mhm.
hacked up that day. Now, subsequently been a little bit disappointing, but the fact that Frankie's on board is a bit of a sign of intent. And I wouldn't be surprised if he played a role. Maybe finishes third, could even close into second. I would be surprised if he won, but at the same time, I still think he's a player in here.
Yeah, he's one of the horses in here that I don't see winning, but I can see him easily making the first 4 or 5. Whether that means he's a bet or not, we'll see. But 20 to 1 is a little bit too big. Just before we move into our selections, anything else that you wanted to flag up?
Well, I've got two that I'm going to mention in the selections part, so I won't talk about those anymore here. Magnitude's maybe a little bit interesting for Steve Asmussen, but he finished behind Built last time, and there didn't seem to be a major reason why that form should be reversed. They did crawl up front, and he was off the speed in around second or third, whereas Built was on the front. So maybe he was a little bit disadvantaged by the way the race panned out. However, I can't see him reversing that form. Of the remainder, Dapper Moon, I suppose, is slightly interesting. But again, he wouldn't be a punting play for me. I just have the two selections, and we'll talk about them in a second.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly mention Seattle Road, who is a massive price and likely will not do much in this race, but he's another closer. He came from off the pace in a pretty messy race last time round. They were running about all over the place. That was in a contest that, honestly, on paper, you were looking at that thinking, wow, this might be the best maiden run at Fairgrounds for however many years. And it kind of fell apart a little bit, honestly. Cromwell was second, Morlock was third. There was a horse back and forth called Pretty Capable that I was quite keen on at a price. He runs earlier on this card, so we'll see Pretty Capable a little earlier on in the day. But I do think that Seattle Road has got a chance as a closer. He's a massive number, but whether he actually qualifies and does anything, we'll see. Tom, we'll move into selections. You've got two of them, so I'll let you take the lead.
Yeah, I was interested in Disco Time. I have to admit, but he's not my pick. One quick word on him. He did a work with a horse called Encino on January the 4th, and it was a very strong piece of work. Encino runs this week, I think on Thursday. So watch how that horse goes for Brad Cox on the return from a layoff. That could be the sign regarding Disco Time. My selection in this race, I've got two. I've got a win play and an each way play. Each way, if you're in the US, is win play show. My win play is going to be Built. I just think he's the horse to beat. I love the fact that he hit the line so powerfully last time. Yeah, he could have been flattered by the way the race panned out, but he won by a wide margin. I think it was 7, 8 lengths at the wire, and he just looks like the one horse that could really step up and be a contender in this 3-year-old division. Albeit the connections aren't used to having these types. My each way play is a horse we haven't talked about, and that's Admiral Dennis. Now, I do want 10 to 1 on him. If he doesn't drift out from 8 to 10s, then I won't play. But if he is a double figure price, then Admiral Dennis could be overlooked. Last time he was very disappointing, but he did stumble at the start. That came in the race won by Built. Magnitude was second. But prior to that, when he won his maiden, he was extremely impressive off the front end. Joel Rosario's booked, which is interesting. Obviously, he's the second string for Brad Cox in this race. But if he's ridden aggressively, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take a big step back in the right direction. And he could finish second or third in this race. Hopefully, in my sake, behind Built.
Yeah, I get it with Bill. Look, he's the, I would say obvious one, but he's one of the more obvious ones anyway in this contest. Look, I am going against you. I respect Bill, but I like Disco Time. I just love the way he hit the line last time around. He really finished strongly. As I say, his final furlong was his most impressive one, but he's not the sort of horse who needs a setup like that. He went hard early on. You mentioned earlier on in the races, or earlier on in the podcast as well. He's got plenty of early speed. If he gets to the front for stall 11, like I say, then great. If he doesn't, I think there'll be enough of a pace for him to aim at. And I think the harder they go, the more it's going to set the race up for him. The only concern is if they go too hard and something stays on from a little further back. But I do think Disco Time is the best of these. I don't, for 1 second, Tom, think that we've got a Kentucky Derby contender in here, but that's why we run these races. We find out and we see how much horses have grown.
Yeah, exactly. And the main trials for the Derby don't really start until March anyway. I mean, we've got plenty between now and then, but you can see from the qualification points that are on offer from these races, these are the early season kind of 3-year-old trials. And as we get towards March and the start of April, then we get the proper big hitting races where we'll see the leading contenders for the Derby. Who knows? Maybe Disco Time, maybe Built could step forward and they could, put their name into the hat at this early stage. It's unlikely that they're going to be the best of the 3-year-old crop, especially because Bob Baffert looks to have a strong hand right now. There's one of Bill Mott's I really like in there as well. But you never know with these races. It's why we run them, as you say, and hopefully we'll get a good display from one of these horses.
Absolutely. And we will be ramping things up as well on the horse racing side of things on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast. We've got loads more to do, plenty more Kentucky Derby trials coming, and we're not far away. When's a Pegasus? Week away? 2 weeks?
Yeah, next week, next Saturday.
Next week, where apparently White Barrio is working the house down, but we'll see on that part. But that will be next week, I would imagine, on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast until Tom decides that there's a tough allowance contest or whatever somewhere else. But that will likely be next week. We are also very, very deep into the playoffs now in the NFL season. We have got an NFL video out on the channel right now that's previewing every single playoff game this week, and we'll be here until the Super Bowl and throughout the off season as well. Tom, any notes, any shout outs you want to give?
Nope. Hopefully, we find a good start to 2025 with a winner. It would be nice if we could get off to a good flyer here with the horse racing podcast. The end of 2024 was tough in terms of winners, but yeah, we're going to kickstart 2025 in the right way, I'm sure. And as you say, we've got loads more coming. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe down below. We're on the way to 500 followers, and it will be fantastic if you enjoy this, that you want to watch more. And we'd very much appreciate a subscription.
Absolutely that. More on the horse racing front is coming next week. Until we next get to speak to you, stay safe, look after one another. Bye.